What's going on, everybody? It's Illuminostic. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. We're going to go way down the rabbit hole as usual, but with even more determination and conviction to get to the bottom of it. Oh, man. So what's new first? The Schwar documentary. Looks like we're going to Puyo in about a week, so we're super stoked about that. It is going to be costly, so we do appreciate you guys remembering to smash the like button, subscribe, support us on Patreon if you can. If you feel compelled to use the virtual tip jar, the super chat, it's actually better if you just the PayPal, the Phoenix Flames email is a better option because we're still not getting any money from AdSense. I've been fighting with them about it for a couple of years. So, today I had forgotten that it was Friday, and I had to decide last minute on a topic for tonight, and I realized that we are on the cusp of a revolution. Hopefully global. The United States, I mean, I'm not trying to be negative, but I think that it's very realistic that if, on the one hand, if Trump wins, you have a psychopath in the White House. If he loses, you have a civil war in your hands. Period. End of story. Like it's gotten to that point, and so I think that, you know, as people that are pursuing a higher path and trying to make changes in the world, that I mean, come on, you guys, we're wasting so much human potential. This has been going on for so long. We still have draconian drug laws all over the planet. We have people in power everywhere that seek to suppress the evolution of consciousness so that they can maintain their positions. And the 1960s, I think I've always kind of considered that the what do you call it, before an earthquake? There's tremors, right? And I think that what is happening now is the actual seismic event. And even though you know, I'm looking forward to the chaos and potential destruction and violence and everything else that could come with the establishment of a new order, the birthing pains of a new world. I understand that all systems are governed by natural law, and one of the applicable laws is that chaos always precedes order. And so I think that this insanity that we're seeing around the world is actually a positive indication, or at least it could be. What type of new order will arise out of the ashes is up to us, potentially. I think that, you know, I'm not the biggest conspiracy theorist in the world, not because I don't think that the powers that be conspire, but because I think that they are way sophisticated, and you're not going to figure it out. You know, my issue with the conspiracy theorists is just that they think they have way too many details that I don't think are really realistic. And so what we're seeing globally is this explosion in interest in entheogenic compounds, psychedelics, yoga. Interest in Hermeticism has exploded. You know, the Kabbalion used to be this like super obscure Hermetic book, and now it's, you know, super well known, and it's an extraordinarily powerful little treatise. For those of you that might not be familiar, I wholeheartedly recommend it. If you can apply the information in the book in action, you can do extraordinary things with it. And so what I'm getting at with all that, I guess, is that I do think that it's quite likely that one of the reasons that we're seeing all of this blowback from the establishment, for lack of a better word, or the elite, the suppression, is because they can see what is coming and what is happening. They know that people are waking up, and they know that people that have had the gnosis are not going to be subjected to being governed, and it's not necessary for them. And so I think that this is at least in part a conscious response from the oppressors or the dominator culture, as Terence McKenna called them. It is true that we are the many and they are the few, but they have tanks and nukes, and I mean, it's kind of like we're dating like the most narcissistic, like the worst case of MPD you could possibly imagine. That's like our girlfriend, you know, these people in power, and I do fear that they would rather just blow the whole thing up than relinquish their position and control. So it's intense. It's definitely intense. We are precariously perched on a precipice, dangling over an abyss to a degree that has never been seen before in human history. And of course, you know, we need to think about solutions and focus on that. And I think, speaking of Hermeticism and the Kybalion, even the idea that all systems are governed by the same natural laws, each individual does actually represent a microcosm of the macrocosm. And, you know, we know the degree to which energy is connected, not just from the input and writings of the great mystics, but also from the confirmation of modern physicists. And so whatever we do to evolve ourselves pulls the entire net of consciousness up higher with it. And so that is our obligation and duty as conscious people, is to, you know, really commit to developing ourselves in a way that is consistent with our higher selves. And so now we're getting into the meat and potatoes, the crux of the apostrophe, as Frank Zappa might have said. From my point of view, the fundamental cause of the school shootings, the suicides, the empty, pointless, shallow popular culture, people don't know what they're doing. There's like this existential crisis that is affecting the majority, I think, of the planet. And it seems, please wait while we try reconnecting. Oh. Okay. That we do actually know why we're here, what the universe is, where it's going. This sort of neo-panpsychism, this idea that the entire universe is somehow fundamentally made of consciousness, is becoming less and less of a fringe idea. Experiments in physics have, you know, increased the confidence that consciousness has some kind of impact on the collapse of a probability wave. You know, I talk about that a lot. And so I'm getting a little bit off track here, but I think that the universe is, how did Aleister Crowley put it, the being in whom suffering and glory are indistinguishable. And as people that are on the pursuing a path to like a holistic enlightenment, that sort of attainment of the understanding of, for example, the necessity of both light and darkness, right? The antinomies, the interplay of which gives rise to all of the phenomenology that we experience. And so I think as humans that have this, you know, we're sort of like the cutting edge of consciousness, at least on planet Earth, except for maybe, you know, like an octopus or something. They might actually rival us with their 8 brains and far more advanced nervous system. We are sort of like the sensory organs through which the universe experiences. And so knowing that we are just here to experience, to create, there is no purposelessness. You know what I mean? We consciousness also, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I was really excited the other day that I found Bohm, I guess. I can't remember the name. The Pedro-Bohm hypothesis, I think. I'd had this vision of how consciousness is the organizing principle, which is actually a term that I'm sort of commandeering from philosophy that doesn't really mean it. It doesn't really mean what I'm using it for. I'm misappropriating it intentionally. Anyways, order comes from consciousness. This is one of the things that is implied by, the double slit experiment and further experiments that have been done to kind of sort that out. Consciousness is what imposes order on energy. And so when we say that we are aligned with the life force, we are living in accordance with the evolutionary gestalt of nature and consciousness, really saying is that we have aligned our consciousness with the with order, with symmetry, with beauty, with harmony and progress and homeostasis. There's a lot of talk, for example, in the spiritual community and a lot of the shamanic communities about these ideas of like negative entities and destructive spiritual forces. And from my point of view, that's not a thing. And I know shamans that say that, for example, they don't even have a language because that's not even a concept in their culture. And I think that evil is just a manifestation of chaos and entropy. And so we can entirely take the woo out of concepts of higher consciousness and spirituality by even just thinking in these terms that could still be reduced to simple mathematics. Looks like my internet connection is really unstable. I don't know if you guys are even still there. Okay. As much as we are in this chaotic firestorm in the eye of a global hurricane, we are also in a position that has never been experienced by human beings on this planet, at least not in modern history. Our access to information, our ability to intentionally take control of our evolution. This idea that I'm always putting forward about, the real thing that we have to do to remedy the ills of the world is to figure out what our higher purpose is and constrain every breath and deed to that purpose. And that eliminates this nihilism and existential mindfuckery that has got so many people just lost in the matrix maze of propagandized lies. And I mean, it's amazing, you guys, when you look out at, Facebook, for example, I've always kind of known this, but the truth is that truly free-thinking people are one of the most rare commodities in the entire universe, as far as I can tell, at least on planet Earth. People really do just generally regurgitate a narrative. And that's one of the things also that I think that we should address and try to deal with. Here goes the internet again. Hello. I don't know. I guess, man, sorry about the internet, you guys. It's been bad for the last couple of days. Hello, Mike. Big shout out to that guy. He's been a tremendous supporter. His channel is awesome. He's always having really interesting talks, sometimes with me. It's good to see him here tonight. So the idea of purpose and meaning, and also I think the idea that actual metaphysical knowledge is not subjective, that all of these things are reflections of a singular process. And I think that one of the really damaging influences out there right now, and for a long time, there are a lot of ideas that sound polite and politically correct and helpful, And so people, you know, I think we generally want to be good, most of us, and so they adopt these things. But in actuality, they're actually very damaging ontological perspectives. And one of those is like, your truth is true. No, it's not. It just isn't. If my truth was that if I shoot myself in the head with a 45 caliber gun, I'm not going to die, I'm still going to die. Like, that's really dumb. And the degree to which people will believe something like that, I mean, the more accurate way to say it would be your interpretation of the truth is true to you, you know. But and also, man, something that's been really grinding my gears is people say, you know, believe whatever you want as long as it doesn't hurt anybody. Believing in erroneous shit is not good. It really isn't. And the influence of religion, perfect prime example. Look at what's happening in the United States right now. The people that like worship Trump, okay? Do you know why that would be? Most of the people are fundamentalist Christians. And so they have this psychological predisposition, a neural net that has been hardwired since they were, most of them, very, very small children, to have this like hero belief or an inclination to be totally invested in this idea that a single person will rise up and defeat all the forces of evil in the world. And so somebody like Trump comes along and you have the perfect situation to make an evil dictator out of the circumstances, you know? And so when people say people can believe whatever they want as long as they're not hurting anyone, that is really just way too much of an oversimplification. I think that we actually do need to change our protocol for how we try to transform our culture. And of course, that's a very touchy and difficult one, and it requires respect and it requires tact. But we have to be willing to confront people about this, you know? Okay, so here's some pragmatic advice, I guess. Somebody pointed out to me the other day that you know, they've done like studies on the brain, the physical changes, neurophysiology, I guess, of people that have consumed a lot of ayahuasca, and they've determined that it enhances the part of our brain that deals with higher cognition. And so somebody said to me, aren't most of the ayahuasca drinking tribes still basically in the Stone Age? If their higher cognition is so expanded, then why aren't they building spaceships and time machines down there? You know, they're still running around. I mean, there's supposed to be 100 uncontacted tribes in Brazil, 2 in Ecuador, you know. And as much as that sounds like a cynical and maybe even like racist thing to say, it's a valid question. I mean, if you're just going to be objective, right? And thank you so much, man. Gosh, every time that happens, I forget what the hell I'm talking about. Okay, so this higher cognition thing, that is what we are engineered to do with higher cognition. And I think also that it does bring up a point, and I see this a lot, like now that psychedelics and entheogens, or however you want to term it, have become, you know, this big renaissance in that world. A lot of people have got bad ideas again. I mean, I saw a guy today that said I dropped acid and realized the world was flat and that God had put this dome over it. And I was like, you didn't realize anything. You're programming from a lifetime of being inundated with the religion that surrounds you was like lit up by LSD. And, you know, when I have said that I have never been lied to by a plant spirit, LSD is a different thing. And I'm not knocking LSD. It is, you know, in terms of like catalyzing neurogenesis, it's the most effective. It's more effective than any of the plant-based compounds. It's not bad just because it's man-made. However, I think it puts us in contact with more of ourselves. We're not really getting as much as the plant medicines from like a larger consciousness that we're suddenly more connected to. That does happen. But the point being that we really don't have the guidance and training that we need to the extent that we need it I mean, you guys, I'm always saying um, the laws that govern all systems are present in every other system. There's a brilliant line. I wish I could remember this author's name, but she said, "All that is metaphor." And I think that is one of the most powerful sentences in the history of Earth. All that is metaphor. It's amazingly accurate. But it's like when you accelerate in a car, it's more dangerous. If you accelerate your consciousness, it's more, especially with a chemical catalyst. If you're pulling a buggy with horses, it's not as dangerous as driving a Lamborghini 200 miles an hour down that same dirt road, right? But if you can do it, you're going to get where you need to go a lot sooner. And I think that because we are facing so many threats, there's so much imminent danger, and we don't have time to sit around in caves for decades meditating. That is why ayahuasca has suddenly become so powerful, and there's so much interest in all of these psychedelics. Because if we don't evolve our consciousness, if we don't impose order that is directed, directing the energy to create, in accordance with a higher purpose, it's just a big mess. If you're unwilling to question your beliefs, you will never know if you're following truth or lies. Yeah, man. And that's, I noticed many years ago that every single one of my major heroes, right? They're all rock musicians, basically. Bob Dylan, Jerry Garcia, Bob Weir, Bob Marley said this. I don't know if I said John Lennon already. Every single one of those guys at one point said, the biggest mistake you can make is to take yourself too seriously. You have to be willing to not be attached, to stuff. I was going somewhere, though. We're going to get back on track, but let me see what high dose psilocybin versus ayahuasca for healing. What kind of healing? That's the thing. I feel that these compounds are all like most efficacious for certain applications. There's some overlap, of course. I mean, you're going to have success treating addiction, PTSD, all of this stuff with LSD. Psilocybin may be more efficacious for depression. I'm not really sure why, but that seems to be what clinical studies are telling us. Ayahuasca is for like deep emotional trauma that you're not even aware of. So I think it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Okay, so back to this higher cognition thing. The entheogens, the plant medicines, all of this stuff are going to give us a better internal environment, a better platform for realization of higher expressions. But if you are not if you have no blueprint, like, if you don't have some utility for higher cognition, it's not really going to do much for you. So it's important that as you're developing these capacities, that you know why you're doing it and that you give it some medium of expression to give rise to a higher order of manifestation. Otherwise, you're really still just getting high, which is cool, but we can do better. Man, I wish I could see my, can I look at it? What is it? Where we go? I'm trying to remember what I said I was going to talk about. God, in politics, I don't want to go there. The last time I did, my channel still hasn't recovered. Honestly, so many people just shut me out. I think all I really did was like criticize Joe Biden or something. And so it's very difficult because it's a really, it's like the perfect illustration of the degree of indoctrination and cognitive dissonance, selective perception. It is amazing incredible how blind, deaf, dumb. I just, my mind is fucking melting from being exposed to it. And for us, I can actually offer something that will help meeting every idea with its opposite, and then like it's like the alchemical combining two things, and a third thing emerges, and the third thing is closer to divinity, or it is a more pure expression. Just making a practice of, you know, whatever you think, counteract it with its opposite, and that really can do wonders. Meditation's focused on this to balance your perception and to eliminate cognitive dissonance. It sounds too simple, but honestly, you know, a lot of this stuff, it really is very, very simple. Okay, so in the beginning, I started to talk about, or maybe I didn't. I think I did. See the alien? I just put out this video about this rock that I was given that was supposed to be from a UFO, the Pleiades, whatever. And, you know, like I say in the video, of course, when this lady told me this, I was thinking, like, how can you look another human being in the eyes and tell them something that dumb, you know, and like hand me this rock? Like, but then I realized the rock actually was like legitimately that weird, you know. I mean, I know minerals and stuff. And so it turned into this, you know, you guys can watch the video, but one of the things I realized yesterday, when I was like watching it right before I posted the final edited video, I had all these experience with Navajo people in the town where I lived during this time period, and I'm always saying that for me, the primary benefit of these practices of whether you're talking about ayahuasca, meditation, any of this stuff, is that we have this experience of the unified field of consciousness. We are taken out of the ridiculously narrow vantage point of perceiving the universe from the perspective of a single ego. And we are given this, albeit maybe temporary, experience of the universal mind to some degree. And the effect that this has on the individual that experiences it seems to be very consistent. People become kinder when you know that everything is just a reflection of your own being. How are you going to like steal or hurt them, or you know you're just doing it to yourself? Also, this idea that if it's true that we are really just having a temporary, illusory, singular experience of the universe, eventually we are going to experience the universe in its entirety from every possible point of view simultaneously. Okay, so that means all the suffering you cause, you're going to have to experience it eventually. And when you are told shit like this, it is helpful, maybe. And thank you guys, Big C 248 and Eric Powell. Really appreciate the support, man. Hi, Tommy. What was I saying, man? I feel like I was on a roll there. When you were told this kind of stuff, it's cool, but it's a much different thing when you experience it directly and continuously. And in my experience, what happens is also that your illusory experience of having a singular point of view is it's eroded, I guess. It's not really the best word, but your experiences of synchronicity, of telepathy, precognition, dream intuitions, all of that kind of stuff increases and increases and increases. And, you know, I'm absolutely positive. Earlier we were talking about the higher cognition, that the physical changes in the structure of the brain. I'm sure that what's happening is that the filters that have been theorized by people like Dennis McKenna that are thought to filter out most of the universe, like what did he call it, a reducing valve that psychedelics just open up, right? We're basically overriding an evolutionary mechanism that developed in order to allow us to function. Because if all of the energies and geometries and stuff that are actually present in the universe were constantly perceptible, we would be completely overwhelmed and no one would have ever survived past an embryo or whatever, and so I think that it's like the physical changes in the brain turn it into a receiver for the collective universal mind. And this experience changes your level of empathy, your level of connection to animals and humans and all of the other sentience in the universe. And what I was getting at with the rock is that during this period when I had this rock and I was trying to figure out what the hell it was, I had a lot of interactions with Navajo. And in this area, I mean, it's like this everywhere I've been. The relations between, white people and Native Americans can be pretty tense. I remember when tall white man got drunk and stabbed some random college kid in the back of the head just because he was white and he was tired of it. I mean, it gets pretty intense there. So the point being just that it was unusual that all of a sudden, because of the state that I was in, all of these natives were suddenly very open and they were telling me secrets. And so I realized very quickly that there were things they know that are real that they don't tell us, and that they are correct, that it is our disconnection from this other layer of existence that facilitated our genocides and continues to allow us to destroy and be greedy and dumb and pointless and all of this bullshit. And what I'm going to tie this together now. I'm always talking about how the gnosis, and I think I've thought about these things in different categories or something. I never really put it together, but I'm always talking about how experiences of the universal consciousness change us for the better, basically. And one night I was walking along in Durango, Colorado, and this peyote roadman, Navajo peyote roadman, stopped me and he started talking to me, because I swear to God, you guys, every single Navajo person, when I was like really in the epicenter of like my awakening process, when the synchronicities were just like next level crazy, I decided I wanted to talk to Danny Carey from Tool and just drove right to him. Like literally and I told people what I was doing and brought someone with me. So there are witnesses, like really happened, so I was really like, tap the fuck in. They could all see it. It was crazy, Watch the video I just posted about the rock. I tell some of the stories, but this particular incident, the peyote roadman invited me to come and drink peyote with the natives, and I was really excited about that. I mean, that is something that I had always dreamed of doing since I became interested in plant medicines and psychedelics as a very, very small child, just through some, I mean, I don't really believe in chance, but just some weird circumstances. And so there were two other native guys with him, and they got mad as hell. And one of them said, "We don't know why you bother. They can't understand." Like they literally believe that white people are not even capable of perceiving this other world to connect with spirit. And I realized that this last night when I had this memory, because I was going back to this time period in order to make this video, that what I'm talking about when I talk about how the gnosis changes people in this experience of entheogens, that's what that Navajo guy was referencing when he said they can't understand. And the Native Americans have been trying to tell us, to the extent that they are capable, forever. They're like, there's this other world, and you guys just like this Jesus guy is not doing it for you. If you're talking about like, compassion and supporting life, and do you think there are negative effects from pharmaceutical drugs even if they don't affect your consciousness? Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Potentially. I mean, let's just think about it this way, okay? And this is a very touchy subject as well. It's kind of like conspiracy theories. If you so much as suggest that you're buying into any conspiracy theory, you're canceled, and questioning the mainstream medical industry is almost as it is just as bad. I mean, people they become unhinged, and so I hesitate to even talk about it. But the vaccines, for example, I don't say that vaccines won't protect you from diseases, but there are successful lawsuits, class action suits in England and Sweden and all over the fucking place, man. And I have literally played, videos. Who's that Kennedy guy that's always talking about this kind of stuff to people where he's just citing facts, giving all of his references. And this guy was a Princeton educated. This friend of mine, he plays guitar for Bob Weir and stuff. Real successful, highly intelligent, Ivy League educated. And he watched it, and his response was, "There are no facts in there." No, he's so indoctrinated and brainwashed that he literally could not even perceive or acknowledge that his beliefs might not be correct. And he actually totally just rejected evidence, claiming that it just absolutely was not evidence. And so, but here's the bullet point of this presentation, which is that I don't think we need pharmaceuticals for fucking anything, really. I mean, they in the jungle, a lot of the tribes will start the baby will start to drink ayahuasca. Basically, it's the first thing that it ever. They put a drop on the mother's nipple the first time she goes to feed the baby, and they say that it protects them, the immune system, against all the shit in the jungle, And there's actually evidence that this is true now. And my suspicion is that if we learn to receive the incoming signals from the DNA, the biophotons, if we really embrace developing our understanding of natural medicine, we don't need this shit. Also, the pharmaceutical companies, I'll give you one example of something that they've done. Okay, I actually heard the evilest lawyer on earth. I can't remember his name, but the fact that the pharmaceutical companies even needed this guy that they chose him to be their spokesperson speaks incredibly dark volumes. This lawyer actually said you can assume that if someone started a pharmaceutical company that they'd been lives. No. One of the pharmaceutical companies they had, this is just one example. They do this shit all the time. They had a drug that for a very rare but terminal illness, if you don't have the drug, then the person's going to die. It was $300 a year. So this big company started buying up all these little companies, and then they raised it so the drug was like $300,000 a year. They know that if there are uninsured people that are dependent on that drug for their life, they are going to fucking die for sure. They will kill you for a profit because they know that the other people that are insured, that they can get the money from the pharmaceutical company. If you're going to trust those motherfuckers to tell you that things are safe that you inject into your baby, sorry, man. I mean, I understand that vaccines are legit, but the additives and stuff, I mean, I have an aunt that her 2-year-old got an injection, and within a week he was autistic. This stuff is not bullshit. People are just terrified to think that they've been deceived, to think that they don't have the intelligence to detect the lies, that their entire worldview is a complete farce. It's just too much for people. So, yeah, man, I mean, benzos did more damage to me than any other illegal drug. Of course, man. And, I know I talked about this in a previous live stream, but they are absolutely drugging people in the United States to the point that the ocean has tested positive for benzodiazepines. If that doesn't fucking scare you, and these are supposed to be tranquilizers that in SSRIs, like every school shooter was on SSRIs. These are supposed to be like antipsychotics and antidepressives. Looks like they're really fucking working, right? Yeah, I know they're. John asked if I think the higher ups are aware of the universal consciousness, and if so, would they carry on doing the same BS they've been doing, knowing that they'll be on the other end at one point? Look, I've been involved with the Masons, and when I was brought in, the guy the guy that signed off on my papers was a 32nd, not 33rd, 32nd degree master of the temple. And before I signed the papers, we went out to lunch together. And while we were having lunch, I was asking him, like, it's just kind of weird, I mean, there's some occulty stuff, I think, which doesn't bother me, but there's also like this Christian veneer that I don't really buy into. And he would just like nod. And so eventually he asked me, like, do you have a criminal record? And I said, well, yeah, and he's like, well, don't worry about it. So do I. And I'm like, what? And he was an ex-cop too. I'm like, so you're a 32nd degree Freemason and an ex-cop with a criminal record. And so, and that's just sort of an interesting, like, addendum or something. But a few days later, when I actually went to the temple to sign the papers and have another dinner with them, everyone in the temple, just like they say, was a third degree, except for him. And I noticed these guys were all just kind of like, they weren't too bright, most of them. They were like Christian, kind of backwoodsy. There were a couple of guys that were maybe cops or convicts. I couldn't tell, but they were sleeved up and looked a little cooler than the rest of them, but all third degrees. And so I went over to this glass case. They had all these Masonic artifacts on the wall. And he said this in front of my girlfriend, which absolutely blew my mind, that he would do that. But I started telling him, like, what I had thought I had figured out. And he listened for a few minutes and he stopped me and he said, you know more about this than any of these men in this room. And so I'm only sharing that in order to sort of explain why I have confidence that my interpretation of that scenario is accurate. And, I don't know everything. And it's one of the murkiest fucking things you can stick your head into. But it appears to me that there are basically two opposing forces in the mystery schools, basically. They're spoken of as the left-hand path and the Black brothers, or the right-hand path and the white brothers. And one works for the collective well-being and the other one works for themselves and only themselves. I am absolutely 100% positive. And if you want to see this for yourself, just order a copy of Morals and Dogma by the 33rd degree Freemason Albert Pike and just read the first 2 pages. You don't even have to buy it. Just go to hermetic.com and pull up a PDF. I mean, there's PDFs all over online. And just read the first couple pages, and you know that you are, it's a manifestation coming from a very enlightened, almost unbelievably intelligent consciousness. I mean, it is like a firebrand in the fucking third eye. Like, every sentence is so concise and so powerful. And you also see right away that they're magicians and they're looking at societies and cultures as if they're energy systems, and they're manipulating them according to geometry and understanding of natural law. It's like a Taoist learns from observation of these things. A Freemason does shit with them, builds empires and pyramids, and So yeah, man, that's a crazy one, and it's another situation where I almost it kind of hurts me sometimes that that people give me shit for talking about the Illuminati every now and then on my channel or whatever. Like, you're hurting the the psychedelic movement. You don't need to be associated with all this nut job fringe shit. But I do it because of 2 things. I think the Illuminati are acting of humanity. Whether they're still in action or not, I'm not positive. They're real. And I think that they have been demonized because, I mean, look at the name. That doesn't sound like a bunch of guys that are trying to make sheep out of people. They're trying to illuminate the whole planet. And they seized Adam Weisshaupt papers, and that's what they said. That's what, and this isn't like propaganda he was planning to send out. This was his private writings. There's no reason to lie to himself in his own fucking diary, So I guess, I don't want to talk about that too much, but that's generally my perspective on it, is that there seem to be a lot of competing influences. Yes, absolutely. A lot of them are supremely enlightened, and it has confused and baffled me that we still live in a world such as we do, even knowing that there are Masons of incredibly high attainment all over throughout the European and North American and Australian power structures. It's really weird. But what Weishaupt's paper said actually is that he knew that the Masons were suppressing certain elements within Masonry were suppressing the organic development of consciousness in the masses, and his plan was to infiltrate the lodges, destroy religion, which is how they got a reputation for being satanic, because when Christians here get rid of religion, they're like, oh, Satan. No, dude, if anybody is Satan, it's Christianity. Look at what it's done to There's more destruction and death and disease and torture than any other influence in human history. I mean, Jesus said, don't judge a man by his intent, but by the fruits of his labor. Well, by that standard, he's the most evil fucking person that ever lived, by his own method of evaluation. So, does your cat kill mice around the house? It's funny. No, not really. But the video I made about our farm, they're actually, one of the opening sequences is the cat, and there's on this chair right here, there's a mouse, and the cat's coming off of the thing. So yeah, and that's another thing that I would really strongly recommend, man. You guys, if you buy into the conspiracy theories, if you think Freemasonry is evil, period, the Illuminati were wicked, actually do some research. And I'm in my evaluation or estimation, what it really is a compendium of maybe thousands of years even of the most efficacious and powerful techniques, concepts, ideas, all these extrapolations from all these different systems and cultures over all of these years, and then combined into a single system that has allowed some of these guys to take over the fucking planet practically. And so, yeah, and along those lines, just in case you guys are looking for some reading, the Illuminatus trilogy by Robert Anton Wilson, I cannot recommend that enough. The first 100 pages, you're going to wonder why you're reading it. Just plow through, trust me. The Kybalion is an extraordinary work. Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike. The Book of Lies by Aleister Crowley, who I also don't think was evil. I really don't. I mean, I understand why he put horns on it, man. He was brought up by the Plymouth Brethren. He was tired of the oppressive, abusive, all that shit from religion. And so he adopted an aesthetic that was, the opposite of that. But what he was really trying to tell everybody is find your highest purpose and constrain your will to that purpose. And then we will have no more conflict. Stars do not collide, right? And every man and woman is a star. So if we are on the path that is proper, necessary for each person, we're on an orbit. You're not going to hit anything. Man, a new concept of God too. I think that's like, people are really starting to get there where they're understanding that all of the religions are wrong. They're all wrong. And most of them are extremely fucking destructive, and they were engineered to be that way. It's intentional, it's absolutely intentional. And obviously, God is not the Sunday school thing that they were teaching people about in 1950 or whatever in the United States. That's not it. It can't be. It's just not, it's not. The earth isn't flat with a fucking dome over it. And the universe is not blind, dumb, material gobbledygook either. None of those things are correct. And that is always, I don't know why it is that, actually Winston Churchill said, man often stumbles over the truth, but he usually just picks himself up and keeps fucking going. And so this idea that when you have two extremes, the truth is somewhere in the middle, I think everyone used to know that, but it's like somehow mankind has like collectively forgotten wisdom that it has accrued over the centuries. And this, if it's real wisdom, it applies to everything equally, right? And so, no, the universe is obviously not just blind dumb. Like, I've been watching all these science veens and all this different stuff, and evolutionary theory is coming unglued right now. They're like, oh, we were wrong about everything. And it's like, well, you cocky motherfuckers were telling us there's no chance that there's God, that you knew everything, that, you know what I mean? And now if you watch, we got the Pentagon telling people that they have recovered alien spacecraft and no one cares. Like, You guys know that? I mean, it's the craziest fucking thing, you know? But yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, we do know what we are, how we got here, where we're going. Like Timothy Leary said, he claimed that we have the memory at least all the way back to the Big Bang, recorded in every cell in our body. That, and I think what he was getting at is this ancient knowledge that the all is mind, and that the mind has some sort of holographic thing going on. You know, so the all is in the parts, and the parts are in the all. Keter is in Malkut, and Malkut is in Keter. As above, so below. I mean, how many fucking ways do we have to put it before we yeah, Mike, where are you at in it? Have you gotten past the first 100 pages? Because that's the real test. Yeah, I don't know, you guys. Fucking breath work. You know, take your plant medicine, get it done, man. Commit. Fear. You got no space for that. Got no space for that. It's like an interference pattern, right? It just, you're trying to be a hollow tube to bring down fire from heaven. And this is no joke, you know, it is no joke, but you can't have that dissonance. So watch my mastering fear video. That's a really good one. All right, you guys, I think I've ranted about all I could rant, and it is movie night. So we took a trip to the jungle a week or so ago to Zamora. We saw some gigantic ancient ayahuasca. I cut some young vine. There it is. And I got this idea to go to Puyo and Gualaquiza and try to make a documentary about the Shuar, which is really exciting for me because as a child, I mean, I've been fascinated with the Amazon my entire life. And one of the big ones was the Shuar, the Warani, the Yanomami. You know, I had certain tribes that, partly because of Wade Davis's book, One River, which if you guys haven't read that and you're into this kind of stuff, man, that's the best book. He was a student of Richard Evans Schultes, the psychedelic Indiana Jones from Harvard that had peyote in a wastebasket by the door, and the students could eat it and then write a paper, and he would give them extra credit or whatever. And we're talking like in the 1930s, you know, it's completely crazy for like Harvard back then. But it's also interesting that that's also where Timothy Leary got himself into. Like, what is it with Harvard and psychedelics? You know, I'll tell you what it is. The establishment has always known. That's something I missed actually when we were talking about the pharmaceutical companies. I think that we are extremely naive when it comes to making excuses for what the establishment has done to us over the years. I think it's very easy for people to believe that psychedelics, for example, were made illegal, and that the penalties were like, I mean, in the United States, you get in more trouble. The sentences are worse for acid, which is like almost harmless, you know, like unless you're predisposed to mental illness, or you know, unless you're super stupid. If you're super stupid with a chainsaw or a car, I mean, you know, it's pretty harmless. It's not addictive. It stops working if you keep taking it. I mean, come on, as far as drugs go, LSD is like, and throwing like 20-year-old kids in prison for 4 decades because they had a little bit of it, like thousands of them. I mean, so here's what I'm getting at though. It's not because they were misguided and uninformed. Marijuana, it was the same thing. Joe Biden, he said legalizing marijuana was the stupidest thing anyone's ever done. You know, and this is one of the reasons I've mentioned, you know, people asking someone like me to vote for somebody like that, even with Trump as the opposition, is like, you fucking kidding me? It's 2020. What are you talking about? This guy talks like it's like 1952 or something. Like, fuck that guy. Fuck them both to death. But anyways, the point is this. It's not that the government didn't know the truth, because the researchers were saying the same shit they're saying now. They were writing the same, coming to the same conclusions. When they hired the marijuana guys, that's what Biden said, we need to do more studies. The first time the government hired people to do studies in the 1930s, they said it's not really addictive, it's less dangerous than alcohol, it's harmless, And they said, well, actually, that's we're just going to pretend like you didn't say any of that because this makes it easier for us to put blacks and Mexicans in jail. It's not true. They knew that what psychedelics did. We know that also because of MK Ultra releases. So it's not just that they were scared and trying to protect everyone. They knew that they could cure alcoholism, maybe schizophrenia, depression, all of these things in a single dose of LSD. 85% of the time, it only takes a single dose under optimal conditions. Mostly they shut that down to protect the pharmaceutical industries. Really think about that. How much death and destruction and violence and abuse and imprisonment. They knew the whole time that these were beneficent substances. Not only that they could cure just about every psychological aberration. Look, I've been to prison. It does not make people better, dude. It does not, right? And this might be hard for a lot of people to hear, but if you just have a basic understanding of neuroscience and you understand how the brain works and you understand how psychedelics work on the brain physically, it seems very likely that even much more serious psychological aberrations like pedophilia, serial killers, anything that has to do with bad wiring in the brain or neurochemical imbalances can be corrected with psychedelics. We wouldn't even fucking need prisons. I mean, I'm not saying that we could ever have a 100% perfect utopia, but could we make it better to a degree that is barely fathomable to most reasonable people? Easily. We could do it fucking fast. And it's people like Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. I mean, come on, you guys. This bitch put 300 people in prison for life for marijuana. The progressive vote is supposed to go to this bitch? Not me, dude. Sorry, guys. I hate Trump as much as anyone else, but I cannot sell myself out like that. Like, both of those people literally destroyed the lives of people I know. You know what I mean? Like, no, I can't do it. Well, thank you guys so much, man. That's really really a nice thing to say. And the Psychedelic Experience manual, based on the Tibetan Book of the Dead by Ralph Metzer and Timothy Leary. Yes, but I was like 14, and it's been a very, very long time. So I'm sorry, I just don't recall. Although, since you brought up Tim Leary, I will say this. I was reminded of this the other day because, my partner is 14 years younger than me, and she didn't really come into the psychedelic fray until fairly recently. And Terence McKenna has become like the prophet of the psychedelic world, which is cool to an extent. I'll tell you guys something you probably don't know, and it'll give you pause to think. And I'm not taking anything away from Terence's genius. Obviously, he was a huge inspiration for me, but he did deceive us all intentionally. He lied, point blank. His Novelty Theory, which you'll notice when you scroll around YouTube and stuff, it's like people have just like swept it under the carpet, like, oh, that didn't happen or something. But a mathematician looked at his mathematics, and they said that he had intentionally reversed a bunch of numbers in order to make the equations work. So he had deliberately deceived all of us, which is, I mean, okay, so if that's true, is it true that he didn't know that 2012 was the Mayan calendar end date, like he claimed, that it was a coincidence based on this fake math that he created? It kind of looks like a lot of what Terence McKenna was telling us he knew he had fabricated. And that's pretty disturbing and insane. Novelty Theory, and I don't think he was wrong. Let me be very clear about this. I think that he fell in love with his ideas and he knew he was right. but he became obsessed or something, and or maybe he really wanted to be rich and famous, and he felt like he needed to convince people he had proof. And for somebody with 187 IQ or whatever, he knew he could deceive everyone very easily. I guess the temptation, I don't know, but a novelty theory was basically the idea that novelty, or the concrest, it's like the expression of or development of idea. I don't know. It's a very difficult thing to summarize. It's like very high novelty periods would be like the 1960s, where there's like leaps of consciousness and there's all these advances in the sciences and there's cultural, artistic explosions. It's almost like a way of measuring consciousness. And so what he was saying is that we would reach this omega point where novelty, you know how like cycles have the omega point is like the fastest they can possibly cycle. So the omega point for novelty was supposed to be December 21st, 2012. And Terrence claimed that he didn't know that the Mayan calendar ended on that date when he figured out this random mathematical stuff that he was busted. And this happened before he died. The guy wrote, it's called Autopsy of a Theory, I think. I mean, you guys can find the mathematician talking about it. But my point was Timothy Leary, really. Terrence McKenna has overshadowed him to the point of like he just never existed. You see almost nothing about him in the psychedelic groups. People pay no attention to him. And from a pragmatic and practical point of view, Timothy Leary actually had more to offer. I mean, Terrence McKenna is mind-blowing to listen to his gift of gab, his extraordinary articulation. But in terms of stuff that you can actually use and apply, I think maybe Timothy Leary had more going on at his best. I actually just listened to a recording that he was doing when the federal cops had surrounded outside, and he just turned on a tape recorder and just started like talking about the psychedelic experience and what it meant. And it is fucking incredible. I mean, Tim Leary was absolutely amazing. And this isn't just something that happened to Tim Leary. There are other people that get this treatment as well, but some of Tim Leary's psychological models were actually integrated into mainstream psychology, but because of his association with psychedelics, he was never given any credit and totally blacklisted. But even in the mainstream, Tim Leary had a tremendous amount of influence, and I think a lot of people have forgotten that none of us would probably be here if it wasn't for Tim Leary and what he did. We had the 1950s, and then Tim Leary came along and turned, millions of people onto LSD, basically, with the help of the Grateful Dead and their sound man. And the psychedelic revolution never would have happened, more than likely, if it wasn't for Timothy Leary. So, epilepsy. No, it's cool. And somebody said something else that I forgot to. I don't remember the Jacob's Ladder thing. Novelties. Okay, so epilepsy. I don't really know that much about epilepsy, but I will tell you something crazy that I have heard of here in Ecuador. The shamans will actually treat epilepsy and supposedly cure it. I've heard several reports of this. Yeah, his name was Augustus Stanley Owsley III, and he made most of the LSD that was consumed during the 60s and 70s. That's a whole nother rabbit hole. But garlic, I've never tried it because it's just why the hell would I do this? But if you drink ayahuasca, supposedly garlic will just shut it off if you take a shot of just pure garlic juice. And if someone comes to a shaman wanting to be, the orange sunshine guy just died, Owsley. That's what I thought for until fairly recently, but that guy was actually manufacturing orange sunshine in Canada. Owsley was like dancing bears, purple microdot, white lightning, dancing skeletons. The family fluff is always just on white blotter. When the Grateful Dead had their 50th anniversary show, they put out gel tabs with 24 karat gold leaf, real gold in them from one of Owsley's crystals that they had cryogenically frozen somewhere or something. And it said, have a happy 50th on the, and man, that was the best L I've ever eaten in my life. And delicious too. The gels were yummy. What were we talking about though? It was the epilepsy thing. So you drink the ayahuasca, and as soon as it starts to work, you take a shot of garlic juice, and I mean, you vomit. And then as soon as you have collected yourself, more ayahuasca. As soon as it starts to work, garlic again. Over and over and over and over for like 8 hours, and you will never have another epileptic seizure ever again. And this is not like studied, proven, but it's something that the shamans claim, and it does seem to have some veracity. This is happening a lot, by the way. A lot of the cures that that have been scoffed at, of course, by modern science, are actually starting to be proven because research is actually being done. And one of them, this is how the universal mind works. You guys pay attention. It's like it'll direct your attention to things, and sometimes to the extent that you can't turn your eyes away. Like it'll just bombard you. In fact, I said I was reincarnation reveal at 3,000 subs, and the caveat is I'm not 100% invested in even the idea of reincarnation, but the universe bombarded me with all of this stuff for a long time, and it seemed to have a very specific, there was this unbelievable specificity to these references and synchronicities and stuff. So keep your eyes out for that. But the claim was that Wachuma or San Pedro cactus actually cures asthma. And so a friend of mine told me that he was stuck in, he's a refugee, so he had no money and he had no inhaler, and he had no way to get an inhaler. And he was stuck in Montanita, which is out on the coast here in Ecuador. And the pharmacist wouldn't even, he tried to give him his guitar as collateral, they just would not help him. And so there was a ceremony with San Pedro, because the coastal tribes are actually the ones that drink it the most here. And that's where he was. So he ended up at a ceremony, and he was, he'd been having this prolonged asthma attack. His life was probably in danger at this point. Then he said he took the medicine, and within a few minutes, the asthma attack had gone away, and it has been 6 years or something, and he hasn't had another one. And a few days after he told me this story, I see that there is a study that's been published that suggested that it actually does. The San Pedro cures asthma. Mm-hmm. At a peak show, like really, and there are a lot of them. That is one of the craziest. Look, you guys, if you follow my channel, and you take me at my word, I have seen a lot of fucking crazy shit. And the Grateful Dead takes the cake. It is to me the most unbelievable and at their best. It's the most ridiculous thing that's ever happened. It's up there with the pyramids or whatever. All right, guys, it's been an hour. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Yeah, actually, no, John, I will keep going with this for a second. Now, what you're saying about the energy vibes of the artist passed on to the listener, to an extent that makes no sense. It basically what they were doing is going around and inducing the gnosis in 100,000 people at a time, 3 nights a week for 30 years or whatever. And it wasn't always like that, but when they were on, it certainly was. And when I went to see them, what I noticed immediately was that they weren't singing. They weren't singing. Don't you tell anybody. I've already told Mike. They weren't singing about it's like they changed their audience in a very specific way. And they weren't singing about it. I mean, very rarely. There's songs like Ripple, and there's a couple. But these guys played 3,000 songs or something, and they only repeated. This makes no sense either. They repeated a show once. So every single show for 30 years was a different set list. No one does that. That doesn't happen. You don't do that. People go out, they play the same show every night for 6 months, and that's what bands do. Not only that, but they would recreate the songs every single time, and so often significantly. And so, yeah, that was kind of the point that I noticed, like, how in the hell are they doing this? They're singing about murder and cowboy stories and love stories and whatever, it's got nothing to do with the message that the people are clearly receiving. And I'll tell you how it worked to an extent here. somehow they figured out that, well, it's not somehow, LSD did it. But the audience, most of them were on acid. The band was often on acid. And so the filters that disconnect us were down. And so the collective mind would sort of engage with the band and the audience, and everyone would know it. And when this happened, the music would do things that are like literally impossible. I mean, a few years back, they had a conference where they had non-deadhead like music scholars from Juilliard and all these serious schools listen to some of the peak stuff and come and say, what, and talk about it. And, one of the guys from Juilliard said, like, in 200 years, people will catch up with this and we'll talk about them like we do about Mozart and Beethoven now. Some other guy was trying to talk about what was technically happening during the improvisations. And he said, we don't even have ways, we can't even write this down. There's subtleties happening that we don't have musical language for. So my point is that when the universal mind engaged, there would be 9 people or 7 people on stage improvising, and these things would happen that were just like, it's like they can't happen, especially over and over again, almost every single night. Like, it just didn't make any sense. But so the other element of that is that I had never seen this band before. I didn't listen to their music, and I was sitting on the ground in the grass, and the power of it and the beauty was hitting me. And it was after Garcia was dead. And so I was sitting there with my head in my hands just thinking, so the washed up members of the Grateful Dead, this is what they're fucking doing. The second I had that thought, they sing, sometimes you get shown the light in the strangest of places if you look at it right. And I'm like, what the fuck? How did they hear me? And then later I remember thinking, like, I was realizing that we were becoming like a collective mind in this like football stadium or whatever, And as soon as I had that realization, I looked around at all the people and I hear them saying, can't look at you without looking at me. We're guilty of the same old thing, talking more about less and less and forgetting the love we bring. And that's the way it was, like, all night. It's like you would just get, your head would go to a collective place with everyone else, and then they would just like fucking lightning bolts of gnosis inducing energy coming from mostly from Garcia, I think. Yeah. I mean, it's really difficult to do that, man, but there's a box set called So Many Roads. If you start on like disc 2 or disc 3 and just go through that, there's some unbelievable stuff. Also, Wembley Stadium, 1972. It's like Dark Stars, Sugar Magnolia, Caution, Don't Step on the Tracks, and then One More Saturday Night, like all in one long song. You'll never be the same, man. Take a good dose of LSD and listen to that, and you'll never recover. Call it getting bit by the dead bug, All right, guys, thank you so much, and good night. It has been an absolute blast. I'm going to start doing one of these in the middle of the day on Tuesday. So watch out for that one, the reincarnation reveal. I'm terrified to make that video, but I said I would do it, so I'm going to have to do it. Also, the Shuar thing, we're really trying to help them protect the rainforest from the Chinese mines. And actually, man, it's hard to turn this one off because I just keep more and more rabbit holes keep opening. But protecting the Amazon is, I mean, and it's something I feel like with all the other global shit hitting the fan everywhere, it's kind of getting swept to the rug. I mean, it's on fire all over the place. They're still logging the hell out of it. I mean, it's not cool. And the Shuar lands, they happen to be sitting on a lot of gold. And so when I first got here, I was working with a shaman that's not Shuar, but he was affiliated with him as teacher Shuar. He's basically my teacher. And so what was happening is that someone would buy the land, what do you call them? Activists, right? In order to try to protect it. And the way the law is structured here in Ecuador, if the deed holder dies, then the family has to pay a percentage of the value of the property to the government. And if they can't pay it, the government would seize it and then sell it to the Chinese mining companies. And so these people that were buying this land kept being found floating in rivers. And so so fucking shady, man. But they to stop the violence, they just changed the law so that now if there's minerals under you, they can just throw you off. And so I'll put a link in the description since I mentioned this. If you guys want to help out, Bosque Medicinals, they're doing really good work. They've brought in researchers. The guy's Czech, so he's brought in researchers from Czech universities and stuff. One of the researchers claimed they found something in the air that starts to reduce tumors within 72 hours. All you have to do is go to the jungle in this place and breathe at the sacred waterfall of the Shar, and your tumors will start to shrink. You guys, actually, there's a video somewhere on my channel of one of those waterfalls. It's just so incredible. And so that's my hope, that I can make a mini doc and even raise just a little bit of money to help these guys, their mission to protect their land, because it's just insane what the Chinese are doing here, just stripping everything. And I don't know if you guys haven't been to the Amazon rainforest. I mean, the first time I went into the jungle at night on ayahuasca, and I had a flashlight, I saw this log that, it's like that big, and it's got like 150 different organisms on it, plants, fungus, insect. And I'm just going like, okay, I'm imagining bulldozers like smashing through this, and just, you guys. Oh, well, here's a little bit more, because, kind of the theme tonight is like, well, how the fuck do we have a conscious revolution with this much opposition? I had a really terrible experience, speaking of the Grateful Dead. I've kind of checked out of every scene, over the last 20 years. I've been really... What do you mean? Which Red Hot Chili Peppers guitarist? The good one from back in the day? Eddie Van Halen too? That was crazy, man. That's Sherman. Oh yeah, I don't even know who that is. The new one or something? Anyways, so the Grateful Dead put out this shoe that is made by Nike, and they they licensed their Dead Bears to Nike. This guy's like famous for slave labor, and here's the Grateful Dead. They were supposed to be this like gnosis inducing. They believed so much in the value of the collective that the janitor that worked in their office actually vetoed, because his vote was equal to everyone else. He vetoed signing with Warner Brothers. And this business model, there's a really great book called Everything I Know About Business I Learned from the Grateful Dead. Some of the biggest corporations, Microsoft, Apple, they all incorporated aspects of the Grateful Dead's extremely innovative and conscious business model, which was, and also they paid roadies like $250,000 a year when Aerosmith paid their guys $9 an hour, and they didn't have as much money as other rock stars, but they still had everything they needed. And it turned out that over the long run, that was a better way to operate. And so to see the Grateful Dead do this with Nike, it really fucked with me. And what was worse is when I went into the groups, and I mentioned it, people were like, well, you probably are using a cell phone and a computer, and there's rare earth minerals and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, so the things that we have to have, that doesn't mean that we can't fight these evils where we can, and hopefully ultimately put some fucking pain on the people that do this stuff. We do have the power. And that is one of our most efficacious ways to fight against this kind of stuff, where we can make decisions. Like, you don't need Nikes. Don't support evil companies, man. Just don't. All right, you guys. So remember, can't talk to you can't look at you without looking at me. We're guilty of the same old thing, talking more and more about less and less and forgetting the love we bring. Althea is the name of that song. It's Greek for truth. So good night. Thank you so much for spending this time with me, and I will see you again very, very soon.